I will warn you right now, if you have heart problems, maybe skip this one, because Nusjuro is about to slice Egghead Island clean in half. Back in Egghead, Bonnie's absolutely wrecked after leaving that secret room. She tells Vegapunk she saw all of Kuma's memory. The old man's all sad because he broke the promise he made to her dad. Just minutes ago, Bonnie was ready to rip the old man's head off, but now she's back to her child form, giving the old man a hug and apologizing. Then, that big mouth of hers asks him to hold out his hand, handing over Kuma's 10-year anniversary gift. It's a sapphire necklace shaped like the sun. Bonnie's pumped because it reminds her of her hero, and Kuma's hero, Nika, the sun god. The old man's like, who would have thought that kid would turn into this? Bonnie asks if Luffy's the son of Kuma's best friend, and Vegapunk says even he was surprised when those two showed up together. Then he tells her everything that happened while she was going through Kuma's memories. A lot went down, right? I mean, she spent like 6 episodes watching that stuff. But finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. We're back to the present where the action is hotter than a barbecue on a summer day, my friend. Bonnie's literally in Saturn's palm, saying it's all his fault. He's the one who made her dad suffer and lose his humanity. The soldiers point their guns at her, and Sanji's pissed because he's stuck. It's not just him. The other 2 weaklings are frozen too. Meanwhile, Luffy's about to pass out asking for food. Please, just a little piece of meat. Atlas says she would get him some but can't move because of the Gorosei's power. The Marines report that they've captured Vegapunk's bodyguard, and poor Sentomaru, aka Big Mac, got beat up before being captured. Kizaru's also face down on the ground, totally immobilized. Looking straight into Bonnie's eyes, Saturn says her dad is dead. He already became a statistic. The Marine HQ wants to know what's happening, but the regular soldiers have no clue. Only the Commodore level can enter the island. Over in frozen Let It Go land, people are reading the news and can't believe the new Yonkou has Vegapunk hostage. They're saying there's no way this ends without some blood being spilled. In another country, they're saying Egghead is even more surrounded than Ohara was, and they're wondering if Dr. Vegapunk is okay. Back at the Revolutionary Army base, Dragon asks where Kuma would go if he had any control over his body. The Funko Pop Head guy says if it were him, he'd attack Mary Joie without hesitation. But Kuma? Nah, he'd go somewhere else. Saturn says it's time for Bonnie to meet her dad in the afterlife. The soldiers get ready to fire, and everyone's freaking out. But Bonnie tells him to screw off, and says if she's going down, she's taking him with her. She uses a distorted future of Nika. Saturn can't believe his ears when he hears it. He's even more shocked when those giant arms land right in his face. And even more shocked when Bonnie's attack fails and doesn't even tickle him. The bastard starts squeezing her harder, saying she only knows Nika's name because she's Kuma's daughter, but she has no clue what Nika really is. He says she still hasn't connected Nika with the white version of the Straw Hat Pirates, and calls her dumb as a rock. Meanwhile, Luffy's stuffing his face with Happy Meal toy, eating the toy that comes with the meal. Saturn asks who gave him food, and the soldiers are like, not us. So that crusty geezer ordered them to slap some sea stone cuffs on Luffy as soon as possible. Up above, Bonnie was trying everything, but she could not even change the Gorosei's age. And the old demon just laughed, saying she could not touch him because he was the one who gave her that power in the first place. The shock hit her so hard her nose started bleeding like she just read the plot of Attack on Titan. He explains it was all just a little science fair project. They tested if they could give a devil fruit power to a literal baby using fruit extract. Turns out, the age fruit was a hit, but totally useless in his opinion. What really matters, he says, is the power to transform into any possible future version of herself. Then this crusty lizard starts mocking her for believing Nika is real. But Bonnie snaps, screaming that he is real. She's been searching for Nika ever since her dad got turned into a walking USB drive. But Saturn says her being this weak only proves she is starting to doubt Nika exists at all. Her dad also believed in that fairy tale one, even said he wanted to save people like Nika. And as if that was not evil enough, this guy casually drops that he did drug experiments on her mother too. Bonnie's heart is beating like it is about to call it quits. Then suddenly, boom! A meteor crashes onto the island, blowing everything up like the season finale of an action anime. Bonnie keeps crying, saying all of this is Saturn's fault. Vegapunk loses it and asks if all this pain was really just one of his sick experiments. The old man cannot believe Saturn had the nerve to offer Kuma a deal to save his daughter, as if he was not the one who caused all of it in the first place. But Saturn, full of himself as always, tells Vegapunk to walk a mile in his boots. Would he care about the emotions of bugs? Trash has no rights in his eye. He stomps the ground like a toddler having a tantrum and says, Garbage is not worth sympathy. Meanwhile, that meteor? It was Daddy of the Year landing in style. The Marines are panicking. Was that a pacifista? But nope, this one has bear paws. That was the real Bartholomew Kuma. He blasts a Kamehameha that deletes a whole building like it owed him money. A soldier screams that the southeast coast of Egghead is under attack by ex-warlord Kuma. Everyone is losing their minds, and Vegapunk asks what Kuma is doing here. Saturn, the cocky lizard that he is, says there is nothing to worry about. Kuma cannot possibly be there. Yeah, okay, keep telling yourself that, Cupcake. This Gorosei goon is about to meet the real definition of fear. Bonnie is so scared, she cannot even hear what anyone is saying. Doberman orders everyone to open fire to stop Kuma from reaching the center of the island. They launch cannonballs straight into his back, but the dude does not stop. He is marching like a tank, ignoring bullets like they are mosquito bites. He nearly falls, but then he hears Bonnie crying, and suddenly he finds strength in places he did not even know existed. He starts body slamming everyone in his path like a one-man demolition squad. Saturn, annoyed that she is still alive, decides to finish Bonnie off for good. He tells the Marines to aim straight for her chest, while the others scream at them to stop. But just in time, Kuma arrives like a bear-shaped angel of death, blasting anyone who points a weapon at his daughter. Saturn tosses Bonnie to the ground like yesterday's leftovers. She sobs, saying even after all that, she is still going to die. She apologizes for not being strong enough. Then Saturn winds up his leg for the big stomp, but Kuma slides in like a linebacker and takes the hit straight to the back to protect Bonnie. She is crying her eyes out, not sure whether to scream or hug him. Saturn cannot believe what he is seeing. He rips Kuma's claws off and blasts him again, but the bear grabs the shot mid-air, and the impact makes Saturn drop his cane like an old man tripping over a Lego. He asks Vegapunk how this is even possible. Kuma was supposed to be dead. Kuma glares at him and remembers every single moment of pain. His entire family enslaved, everything he loved taken from him, but he is still alive, still standing, still fighting for the one person he can still protect. Saturn says he should be scrap metal. After all, when the Revolutionary Army rescued him, they activated his self-destruct protocol. But look at him now, alive and kicking. And with all that pain built up inside, he throws one punch fueled by every ounce of rage he's carried for decades. And that hit sends Saturn flying like he just got launched out of the One Piece universe. Everyone is stunned. Bonnie is sobbing. Kuma's punch was so strong, it sent Saturn flying and knocked down a bunch of buildings. They came crashing down on that fool, squashing him like a pancake. The crew was absolutely stunned, unable to believe their eyes. And the Marines were just as shocked because he literally just punched one of the most powerful authorities in the world. This punch made Luffy's smack on the Celestial Dragon look like child's play. After that, Kuma collapsed to his knees, and the soldiers rushed to rescue Saturn. Bonnie kept crying, but the Straw Hats could finally move again. They rushed to take Bonnie, but Sanji told them to stop, because even though Kuma was all stiff, he managed to move just enough to get to his daughter. But the worst part was when Sanji realized the FBI could be knocking on his door any moment now, because now he knew Bonnie was actually a kid. Kuma hugged her, and Frankie was out here competing with the girl to see who could cry more. Vegapunk was completely lost because he had installed a self-destruct device on Kuma, and once the switch was flipped, he should have been completely immobilized like a vegetable, and even science couldn't explain it. He says it's not physical strength that makes pirates special. Meanwhile, Kizaru was finally getting back on his feet, and Sentomaru, all battered up, was happy Kuma made it. But the soldiers were freaking out because they couldn't find Luffy anywhere. They didn't know how to report that he'd just dipped. After that, Kuma was completely powered down, and Bonnie thanked him for everything he did. She knew everything because she saw his memory, all the happy and sad moments he lived. With a waterfall of tears in her eyes, she said how happy she was to see him again. She said her mother was an incredible woman. She supported him all the way and would throw hands with anyone who messed with him. He was a bit of a doofus for rejecting Ginny when she asked him to marry her, but she knew it was all for her own good. And now Bonnie knew that Kuma never stopped thinking about her for a second. She also knew he wrote her several letters. They never arrived because of that rat Alpha. He wrote about everything he did while traveling the world and how impressed he was with Dr. Vegapunk's inventions. He couldn't wait to go on an adventure with her. The girl hugged him, saying that even though everyone calls him a tyrant, he's the kindest person in the world, and she promised she'd never forget that. Meanwhile, the Marines were still trying to dig up Saturn. He started releasing such monstrous energy that it sent everyone flying. The crew was in shock because they thought the Gorosei was a goner, ready to be printed on a t-shirt. But then Saturn crawled out in his Spider-Man form and landed like a Marvel hero. But let's be real, this old man was no hero. His arm got ripped off, and even that fool couldn't regenerate anymore. He asks Vegapunk if it was him who did this, but the old man says it was the power of love. The horned guy says this is just a mistake and starts regenerating again. His horn gets all shiny and his arm is good as new. The backyard chef asks how his body regenerated so fast. Now that the Gorosei was all good, he says he doesn't need Kuma anymore and starts throwing his claws at him again. But Sanji comes in with a kick to stop that old bearded dude. Frankie shouts that Kuma helped them out a bunch of times. He then readies a laser beam to blow that bum away. But Kizaru stands up and says they've really grown. The giant robot stabs Saturn and tells him to go to hell. But Borsalino pops up behind him, saying, "Show me how strong you've got," and kicks him right in the face, sending him to the ground like a pigeon turd. Bonnie says Kuma isn't moving, and Vegapunk tells Atlas to carry him to the lab. She carries him on her back, and Applehead says he'll take care of Saturn. They should focus on Bonnie and Kuma. Kizaru asks if they're going to let them escape, but Saturn doesn't care. Vegapunk calls him a coward because he doesn't have the guts to finish him off. He even calls him Borsalino and remembers when they used to have fun as best friends. On the ship, Doberman listens to Saturn's order to punish those who defy the world government. In other words, he's calling in a full-on buster call. This island was deemed a threat to the government, and it's about to get a destruction call to wipe everything out. But this time, they wouldn't have to wait for the ships to arrive because they were already surrounding Egghead. They were ready to burn the entire island to the ground with not even a single soul left alive. Vegapunk freaks out when he hears the buster call. Saturn says that those who study the world's secrets, those who carry the blood of a lost race, and those who awakened an ancient god must be completely obliterated. The buster call was finally activated. Vegapunk asks Saturn to cancel the order because this island is the future of humanity. The Marines were running around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to evacuate the island, and they wanted to know what the heck was happening at the center of the island to cause this madness. Meanwhile, the crew was hauling Kuma on Atlas's back. Vegapunk kept insisting, but then the doll girl interrupted. She told Saturn and Kizaru to get to their ships because the island was about to turn into a war zone, but the horned guy said they were staying until everything was ready. He then ordered the bombardment to start, and the doll girl was like, "You've got to be kidding me." Kizaru told her to leave if she didn't want to end up as a pancake. Vegapunk asked if they were really going to solve everything by just killing him. After all, Egghead houses some of the most incredible scientific discoveries. Destroying the island would wipe out a century's worth of scientific progress, and he begged Kizaru, who could barely look him in the eye. Saturn asked if Vegapunk was still hiding something from them, and he said they didn't need that progress. Vegapunk begged again for the sake of humanity, but the jerk said he forgot to mention the ship that escaped from the island yesterday. He'd already ordered his soldiers to chase them down and destroy them, because there might be someone who knows about the Void Century on that ship. And to make sure no one survived, he sent a warship to turn them into chopped meat. Vegapunk lost it because those people were innocent and didn't know anything. But Saturn said they were complicit, just like the people of Ohara. They broke the law and got what they deserved. So all of them, along with the island, deserve to be wiped out. What a nice guy Saturn is, huh? Just setting humanity back. The ships were almost ready to fire. The Straw Hats took the opportunity to escape through the vacuum rocket while Vegapunk distracted the ace. Bonnie asked what would happen to Vegapunk, but Sanji told her not to worry because he'd go fetch the old man. He then called Nami to check on things. He explained that Saturn triggered that damn buster call. Chopper and Usopp were freaking out, saying they couldn't take any more of these destruction calls. Imagine Robin, who's about to get her third one, considering she already survived one when she was 8. Chopper told her to keep resting, and Nami asked if Luffy was down there. Sanji didn't know where he was, but figured he was fine. And Zoro was still fighting Rob Lucci. Jinbei went to help Zoro so he wouldn't get lost on the way back. The problem is, they couldn't use the Vega Force to take them to the sea anymore. Kizaru destroyed it, but then she said that Brook had an idea to escape. Meanwhile, Brook was cracking up, saying that carrying a ship on land was nothing for him. Lilith said he was a genius, because this way they'd reach the exit super fast, since he froze the clouds to make the ship slide. But then she asked how they would stop the ship, and Brook looked like he was caught in headlights. He took a hit when he admitted he hadn't thought of that part. She screamed that they were going to crash if they didn't do something. Meanwhile, the ships kept surrounding the island, and Doberman said the barrier was still up. So he gave the order for the ships to destroy the central factory and Egghead City. And finally, the terrible buster call began. It was bullets, punches, and explosions everywhere, and the city started being completely obliterated. Meanwhile, Luffy kept stuffing his face, eating like a hippo. The soldiers ask if that's the Straw Hat and order them to capture the Yonko, but they get blasted by cannonballs before they can do anything. The bombs just keep coming, and the soldiers are screaming to wait because they haven't even run yet. To make things worse, there were pacifistas shooting their laser beams that were setting the city on fire. Vegapunk can only watch in despair as everything he worked for gets destroyed right before his eyes. He can't believe all his effort is being thrown down the drain, and there's nothing he can do. The future of humanity is doomed, and his dreams are shattered. Saturn orders Kizaru to do what needs to be done, and holding back his tears, he walks towards Vegapunk to execute the guy. Sanji shows up, asking what the hell Vegapunk is still doing here. Atlas's group was escaping on the vacuum rocket, but, of course, good things never last, because Kizaru suddenly appears beside them and whips them with a laser beam, slicing their ship in half. The crew flies off, and Sanji speeds off, yelling he's going to save Bonnie. The rest of them can just figure it out. Saturn tells the pacifistas that the targets are Bonnie and Kuma. They prepare missiles to exterminate them both, but the pacifistas recognize Bonnie and hesitate. The real Kuma grabs Bonnie mid-air, and Saturn laughs, saying this is so ironic, because Kuma sacrificed himself to save Bonnie, and now his own clone is going to kill her. He says it's a fitting end for these insects. Vegapunk watches Bonnie fall and says that when he found out she had become a pirate, he shook in his boots because he knew a horrible future was waiting for her. One day, the pacifistas with her father's face might be ordered to execute her, but outside, the Marines failed to destroy the escaping researchers. Their ships were completely obliterated. In their last breaths, one of them sends a message to Kizaru saying that someone is heading straight for Egghead. Egghead Island was getting totally wrecked, and out of nowhere, Toei threw in some fucking 3D into the anime. But hey, we're rolling with it. I was this close to exploding at home with all that quality. The Marines pointed their little piercing toys at Luffy in whale mode, and he just tells them to try their luck if they think they stand a chance. The kid starts snoring like a motorcycle and does a super digestion move that instantly snaps his body back to normal. And the chubby guy is already trying to learn how to eat that much without gaining a pound, just sitting there wondering where all the food went. Suddenly, bombs started raining down where they were. Luffy grins, and the guys were getting swallowed by the flame. Someone asked where the Straw Hat went, and all they got was laughter along with the drums of freedom. The Marine says even though he's a Yonko, they have the numbers. So the three of them were going to grab him with Kairoseki together. They pulled out their handcuffs, but before they could finish counting, the ground started bouncing like a trampoline. Everyone got thrown into the air and ran straight into the kid cosplaying as Jack Frost, sprayed all that white powder in his hair, but let's be honest, it looked like he snorted a bit too. He's bouncing around like a 5-year-old, and the soldiers who were full of courage just moments ago take the chance to leg it. Back on the ships, they kept launching cannonballs at the island, and I cannot handle this CGI. It goes from 3D to 2D in 1 second. At the center, Vegapunk watches the crew falling from the sky like pigeon poop. He calls Atlas with his walkie-talkie to save Bonnie and Kuma. The rest of them can just figure it out. Saturn orders the pacifistas to shoot them, and Sanji's climbing in slow motion to rescue the girl. Atlas reaches Bonnie and tells her to listen carefully. The girl makes a weird face but follows instructions, turning to the pacifistas and ordering them not to shoot and to help them escape the island. Nobody understood a thing, and the soldiers on the coast swear they heard something. Then, just like that, the pacifistas obey and turn their lasers on the Navy ships. The game literally flipped in 5 seconds, and now all the Marine weapons are pointing at themselves. They sent a Kamehameha that blew up the ships, and that 3D wooden stick nearly shot through my computer screen. Vegapunk breathes a sigh of relief as it works, and the vessels start getting wrecked one by one. The old man says his only fear is that Bonnie ends up as dust at her father's hands. There is no way he could let that happen. That's why he programmed all the Kuma Pacifista clones to obey Bonnie, with a control chip even more authoritative than the Gorosei themselves. That way, Kuma would always be on her side. But then Saturn stabs him in the back with those sharp claws. He tries to cosplay Ace with a hole in his stomach, but Saturn is blind as a bat and hits his chest instead. Everyone goes nuts, and Bearded Hornhead orders Kizaru to wipe them out immediately. Borsalino teleports in, raining shots that leave them like a colander full of holes. Sanji launches himself at the Admiral with a flying kick, but he dodges, saying he's going to cut those two in half. He tells Bonnie not to worry though. It will be fast and and painless. The egg fryer activates turbo mode, running at 300 miles per hour. But it's too late. All they hear is a maniacal laugh and a giant fist barreling in, smashing Kizaru like a bullet train. The lantern guy kissed the ground, and Luffy grabbed his arm. This kid is so insane he lands that punch straight from the floor while bouncing around like a flea. He's like, now that my stomach is full, I am going all out, 100% power. He turns the entire island into a giant bouncing playground that just will not stop dancing. Saturn is totally confused because the ground looks like jelly and the kid is hopping from side to side like a frog. The crew falls from above, but instead of splatting on the floor, they land perfectly fine. And they're still right in front of the big boss, who just told Vegapunk to take a nap. The soldiers are so distracted by the bouncing island, they totally forget they are being blasted with bazookas. Kizaru gets up from that hit, and Bonnie runs straight to the old man with the apple head. She's relieved he's still breathing and yells for everyone to get out of there. But Saturn the Horned tells them not to waste their time because bugs always meet the same fate. Out of nowhere, a beat drops that shocks everyone. Luffy fires up his JBL, blasting a wicked Pagodown beat that even wakes Emeth from his 200-year beauty sleep. Bonnie hears the song and immediately remembers Nika's dance her father taught her, the same one they used to do together every night. Kuma says that one day Nika would show up, cracking up and shaking that booty. Vegapunk asks if she still hadn't realized, but even he wasn't sure until he saw it with his own eyes. The Straw Hat Luffy that Kuma had protected so fiercely was none other than Nika, the sun god. And when Bonnie sees the kid striking that pose, there's no more doubt. She starts crying because Kuma was right the whole time. Vegapunk says that this Buster Call is useless. People from all over the world have been waiting for this for centuries. Meanwhile, a massive ship is heading to Egghead. The Navy ships are falling one by one with nothing they can do. The lookout warns something is approaching, but it is not a sea beast weapon. They come face to face with a colossal ship and rush to alert all troops. The shields and Viking banners erase any doubt anyone could have had. Everyone thought these guys had disappeared over 100 years ago, but this ship is only massive because its crew members are even bigger. They are about to plow through every Navy troop gathered, bomb raining down, but the cannonballs barely scratch the boat. They ask what the hell these giants are doing here, and from above, none other than the giant warriors Dory and Brogy jump down, playing seesaw and sending those weak soldiers flying. They draw their weapons and destroy those warships like they're toy boats. Brogy says they came for the Straw Hat. Dory is hyped to see the sun god. Now the brawl is about to go full throttle, my dude. The Marines bolted in panic as soon as they saw the giants. Brogy smashed the ground with his axe and sent those guys flying like action figures. The two of them jumped onto Egghead Island, shouting that they came for the Straw Hat. Their crew showed up right after, running over the Navy and storming the island. And they told them to take care of the annoying ships around the island. Kashi and Oimo took charge and charged forward, smashing the ships like they were little toy boats. The Navy soldiers were freaking out, asking why all these ancient giant warriors were on this island. They tried firing cannonballs to stop them, but another ship got obliterated before it even had a chance. The warriors were slicing warships one by one, turning into the ultimate nightmare for every troop. From up in the clouds, Usopp was spotting the giants and screaming that the masters had arrived. But with that size, he didn't even need binoculars to see them, right? He was worried, thinking he'd never see them again, even if they went back to Elbaf. He remembered when the whole world feared the giant pirates. But they split up because of a fight between the two captains, Dory and Brogy. The Straw Hats met them in Little Garden in the middle of that battle. It had been going on for so long, they even forgot what started it. Usopp said he wanted to be a brave sea warrior like them. Oimo and Kashi had met them back when they were gatekeepers at Eni's lobby for 50 years, and now they were all gathered on Egghead to help the crew escape this nightmare. Edson could not believe they had such strong allies. He said they must have come after reading the government news, and now everyone was getting ready to make a run for it. Nami asked where Brook was, but could only hear Lilith screaming. The skeleton said to chill. He was coming with the Sunny. He was totally relaxed, not even thinking about how to stop the ship. Lilith screamed that if they fell off the island, they'd crash into the barrier and blow up. Meanwhile, Zoro was locked in a fight to the death with Rob Lucci, and Jinbei was flying like a manatee to help the swordsman. Zoro told Tigger to stop bugging him because he was in a hurry, but the little punk said only the winner gets to say that. He lunged again with those sharp claws, claiming he heard the swordsman was a burden slowing down his crew. Zoro dodged a kick and blocked the maniac ready to slice someone. Lucci said they were a bunch of idiots who couldn't leave a single member behind. So as long as the mop head is breathing, the Straw Hat Hats will stay trapped here. But his logic is completely whack, right? Because if by some miracle he killed Zoro, the Straw Hats would challenge the devil himself for revenge. Down below, over 30 Navy ships had already been sunk. Vice Admiral Red King ordered the smaller and medium ships to fall back, leaving only the warships to push forward. He ordered them to shoot the pacifists, but he couldn't believe they had to attack their own guns. Meanwhile, in the middle of the forest, two crazy maniacs were just chilling. Yep, Van Augur and Katarina Devon lost in the woods like nothing was happening, and thinking about how to spice up this fight even more. In the center, Bonnie could not believe her eyes. Luffy asked why she was crying like a total baby, and of course, she said she was crying because she had been looking for him all this time. Luffy asks if she hit her head since he was with her the whole time, but she says she did not know he was Nika. The kid had no clue what she was talking about, and she tells him she always wanted to throw rubber punches like him. Then he remembers that embarrassing moment from earlier when she barely tapped Saturn, but she screams that she wants to see the real punches since he is the big boss, and she tells him to punch that old bearded guy in the face to get back at Vegapunk. Luffy is totally confused, and his eyes practically popped out when he saw the scientist on the ground with a hole in his chest. Saturn says these bugs deserve nothing but death, but Luffy disagrees and says he will get everyone off this island, telling Bonnie to learn how to throw a real punch. He was about to unleash a massive beatdown until Saturn fired an invisible haki shot that stopped him. But of course, he did not give up and spun back like a helicopter, asking what the heck he was doing hurting his friend. He unleashed a rubber dawn machine gun that scraped Saturn's face, rained down a storm of punches that slammed into the miserable villain's face, and Bonnie just watched the Liberator warrior who is going to save this world someday. The Gorosei was almost turning into a pancake from all the punches he had taken. Luffy finished him off with a crushing punch loaded with haki, sending Saturn flying backwards while doing a Michael Jackson moonwalk, and after wrecking that trash across the buildings, he laughed like nothing happened. Atlas screams that this is their chance to escape. She told Bonnie to activate her float mode and fly over the island. The girl asked Vegapunk to come with them, but the old man told her to go ahead, because he is a medical expert and knew that moving now would kill him. But Kizaru shows up again saying he will die even without moving, and fires a deadly laser to kill two birds with one stone. But the Friar of Fate arrives with a once-in-20 years move and blocked that Raduken with a simple kick. Borsalino is jaw-dropped, and Frankie even more, screaming that it was a laser beam. Sanji says he does not care because love is stronger than light, and I just hope all that love is for Vegapunk, or you better get ready to turn into a softie in jail, my friend. Kizaru says if that were true, physics would not exist. The Supreme Cattle tells Frankie not to let Bonnie get hurt, and to get out of there while he handles the lantern guy. Bonnie did not want to go without Vegapunk, but the old man said she needs to go with Kuma, and they fly off toward the northeast coast. Luffy starts cracking up while bouncing, telling Sanji that this was insane. Kizaru says he will lose face if he leaves without the heads of the two, but the Egg Friar says he just has to write an apology to the Navy, and it is all good. Saturn was buried under the rubble, and Katarina asks if he is not one of the 5 elders. She asked what kind of power that was, and said she had never seen an elder descend personally to the lower world, but that was a huge help. She put her hand on his leg and said the mission was complete. Saturn asks why they are here. He never imagined that the level 6 Impel Down savages would be someone's pawns, but she says Teach is special, just like her lineage. The bearded guy says they are always plotting evil plans and asks again what they want. Van Augur's answer? Nothing less than the world. Saturn tries to crush them, but the two bounce away. After all, the mission was already complete. Now that she touched down, she could transform into one of the highest authorities in the world. Big Nose asks if Augur could not have teleported them farther from the island, but he says he is still training. But behind them was undoubtedly one of the ugliest characters in the anime. Caribou was crying his eyes out and begging them to wait. He said he never expected to see these two legends here, Van Augur the Supersonic and Katarina Devon the Crescent Moon Hunter. He said he went to the sea with the dream of being like them. His dream is to be one of Teach's men, the terrible Blackbeard, and he begged them to let him see the captain. Caribou says he is hyped to finally meet Blackbeard's pirates. He's been waiting for this moment his whole life. Says there's something Teach is gonna love knowing. So if they introduce him to the captain, they'll earn some brownie points with the big guy. But Augur points that weird poking device at him, and the slimy dude freaks out, saying he's not their enemy and that this meeting is fate. The sniper wants to know what a pirate like him is doing on a world government island. He says the captain has tons of assassins on his tail, but Caribou swears he is not one of them. Adds that if they kill him now, Teach will smash their faces in, and that only makes Augur more pumped to pull the trigger. He claims to have info no one else has, but Katarina says it's just a bluff from some idiot trying to save his own skin. Yet he is certain this info will shake the whole world. It's about the ancient weapons named after the old gods. One of them is Poseidon, Poseidon, the power of Princess Shirahoshi, and the other is Pluton, hidden somewhere in Wano. Probably. Only he and the Straw Hats know where these insane weapons are. Van Ogre asks what he knows. Of course, he cannot spill it here. Says if they let him meet Teach, he'll hand over everything. Meanwhile, off the coast, a massive war rages between the pacifistas and the Navy ships. Ships keep getting blown up one by one. Sailors try to fight back, but the pacifistas' bubble shields are so strong they laugh off cannonball. The Navy tries to retreat, but the pacifistas show no mercy, blasting lasers that annihilate everything. Vice Admiral Doberman orders the ships to pull back from the shore. They had zero chance against these giant robots, and Egghead will be impossible to take if they do not regain control. Other Vice Admirals start whining that nothing but disaster ever happens on this island. They want to cancel the Buster Call now that the giants are on Egghead, but Guillotine says Vegapunk gave the pacifistas authority to a pirate. That means they gotta make the old man suffer and regret betraying the world government. So the new plan is to regain control of the pacifista, and for that, they need to take out the pirate jewelry Bonnie. Vice Admiral Tosa is already racing toward them, trying to get close enough to take out the girl. They notice the Marine getting close and push the Dom boots to max power, but Frankie is not used to this speed and almost faceplants straight into the dirt. After flying like a confused cockroach, he regains control and has to zigzag between the trees so he does not become a woodpecker. Tosa is more of a brute and wants to prove he is no soft punch. He starts smashing trees like a raging bear, and if he does this to a thick tree, imagine what he would do to tiny Bonnie. He says his claws are 10 shiggins that can tear through even armor. Finally, he gets close and goes in for a Tosa bite ready to crush the poor girl. But at the last second, a massive axe falls right on him. Everyone is confused and just sees Broggy and Dory grinning like a couple of maniacs, are in shock asking what the giants are doing on this island. They are already pressed for time and more enemies show up. Broggy asks who they are. He checked the wanted posters for the new members but does not recognize any of them. So they ask if they are Egghead workers. Dory says they came because of the Straw Hat, and Frankie asks what they could possibly have against his captain, but the giant replies they hold nothing but gratitude. They are warriors from Elbaf, so if they are Luffy's allies, they will protect them at all costs. Other giants show up, saying they are all on the same side. Frankie loses it because he was about to soil his pants from sheer terror. Broggy apologizes, saying it is all his fault. The giants burst out laughing. Bonnie jumps in to say that Luffy, Sanji, and Vegapunk are still in the center of the island. She asks if they can help, and Big Mac says of course they can. So the crew hops a ride with the giants to their ship. Blackbeard tells them to leave everything to the captains, and Frankie asks if these are the masters Usopp is always talking about. Meanwhile, at sea, the Vice Admirals are furious they lost contact with Tosa. They speculate he was either defeated or ran into a giant, which honestly is basically the same thing. Unless that Marine was Levi Ackerman, then the giant would be shaking in his boots. Pomsky was heading to the island and Bluegrass was coming by sea. Meanwhile, Doll's kitty flew and hitched a ride with the crusty old lady. If this woman did not have lungs black from smoking, I might even marry her. The old lady with dentures asks if she has ever fought a giant. Doll says her boss 20 years ago was a giant. Bluegrass adds that Saul was insanely strong back then. The giant who looked like a beaver asks where the rest of the crew is. When Frankie says they are in the lab above the clouds, the giant thinks they are in Skype. Up above, Saturn is a complete wreck. His body starts shaking, and he transforms into a Satan uglier than before. Wherever the Spider Lady walked, everything rotted. Luffy rushes to check if Vegapunk is okay, but the old man's heart is already close to retiring permanently. The kid says if the Crown does not fight, they will not make it, but he would die for sure if he moved. Kizaru complains that they are nothing but headaches, and Sanji says it is time for him to go home and stop bothering everyone. But Saturn comes back looking like a Twitter feminist ready to cancel you. Luffy says he promised to help Apple Uncle escape the island, but Vegapunk says there is still something he needs to protect. He wants to tell Bonnie about her authority when she grows up, and he asks them to take care of her because her life is in extreme danger. Sanji notes Saturn looks less and less human. He realizes he is poisoning and rotting everything he touches. Gorosei aims at the two distracted people, and Sanji yells to watch out. He saves the old man before he is crushed to dust, but he cannot move much, or he will lose even more blood. Sanji dodges another attack, and Luffy gets ready to strike back. With two massive slaps, he claps and starts mocking Saturn. The guy flies into a rage, swinging at the kid in every direction. The captain orders Sanji to get the old man out. He blocks Gorosei, who was about to interfere, saying that this horned fool is no match for them. The horned villain goes full berserk, and Luffy dodges every blow while laughing at him, making Saturn look like a fool while the two escape. Vegapunk says that is enough, but Sanji tells him to shut up, and he takes a boot boot right to the face to teach him a lesson. The old man flies back, and the pub cook realizes things just got serious because Kizaru plunged his sword into Vegapunk's back, leaving a massive hole in his chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Sanji and Luffy scream in panic, and his vital signs start dropping fast. Luffy orders Sanji to get Vegapunk to the other side of the island, and with an even bigger hole in his chest, the old man is hanging by a thread. Borsalino is already on their tail, but Luffy is not having it. He starts growing massive while yelling at them, calling them a bunch of miserable jerks. He grabs Kizaru midair with his right hand, dodges a massive blow, and snatches the horned guy's head, making those two punks truly feel the wrath of a Yonko when he is pissed. He starts crushing them, yelling that they are going nowhere. Vegapunk starts laughing at the kid putting the big guys in their place. In his last words, he says there will be nothing left for the weaklings. His heart finally stops, and Sanji screams like a madman. He tells him to hold on and asks why he is smiling. But then a broadcast starts rolling across the entire world. He introduces himself as Dr. Vegapunk, a humble and genius scientist, and he says the message he is about to leave will shock the entire world. It is none other than the hidden truth of the world itself. Shaka says it is not smart to just blurt it out right away. People need to actually pay attention. The old man warns that the moment some sneaky journalist finds out, it will spread all over the world. But the giant robot says there is a chance they can manipulate the info. So they decided to stall a little before dropping the real bomb. They said these mind waves will broadcast worldwide, hacking the Navy's system and creating one massive transmission. The Marines tried to shut it down but could not stop it at all. The tavern cook is completely lost and asks why he is hearing Vegapunk's voice. Saturn and Kizaru are still trapped in Luffy's grip like flies in a spiderweb. Shaka says they need to wait until everyone can turn on their video Den Den Mushi, and Luffy spots the helmet dude, who says they will wait 1 hour so the whole world can get ready. Saturn is in shock, asking what they plan to reveal. Vegapunk says 1 hour is way too much time. Nami and Usopp start whining that while they are doing everything to escape, Vegapunk is just chatting away. But Chopper and Tinhead find it weird because they heard Shaka's voice even though he got shot by York. Not even Edison knew what the heck was happening. The giants marched through the forest with huge grins because something big was about to go down. They kept searching for the Straw Hat. The Marines joined up, and the giants called them a bunch of idiots. The soldiers fired and caused a massive explosion, but it did not even tickle these monstrous warriors. They hit back by smashing their axes into the ground and sending everyone flying, destroyed that human anthill in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Vegapunk says he will give them 10 minutes to get ready. Innocent Luffy says, as usual, that Vegapunk and Shaka are still alive and kicking. Now it was time to wipe out those government trash. Over in Marijois, the Celestial Dragons wanted to know what kind of broadcast this was. St. Marcus asks what happened to Vegapunk. Saturn replies telepathically that Kizaru killed him, and he saw it with his own eyes. Top Man El Bigodon says he could only have left a message programmed to trigger after his death. They needed to find the source of the broadcast as fast as possible. It had to be somewhere in Egghead's Laba Stratus, protected by a barrier. The only thing they knew is that if Vegapunk reveals the truth about the world, Imusama will shred them to bits. While waiting for the 10 minutes to pass, the old man goes to grab a coffee. In Dressrosa, the people start realizing something, saying that the famous Dr. Vegapunk is trying to reveal something to the world. Everyone rushed to the plaza to watch on their video Den Den Mushi. At this speed, the signal would barely make it before the speech ended. Rebecca arrives from training, ready to watch the broadcast. Leo and Kabu show up asking if this is the scientist Luffyland held hostage. But Rebecca tells him to stop being dumb because this is obviously government lies. Lucy would never do something so cowardly. Hiro says it looks like Vegapunk is speaking freely and on his own, so he is probably not being threatened by anyone. In Fuchsia Village, the people were also getting ready. They thought it would be about Luffy doing something bad again. They said this truth about the world thing is total nonsense, but they were still curious. The village is poor and could not even afford a video Den Den Mushi, so they would just listen on the radio. In Water 7, everyone started waking up in the middle of the night. Iceberg immediately tells his maid to get the video Den Den Mushi ready, but the girl was sharp and had already turned it on. She even set up screens at all the shipyards. In Morgan's magical balloon, Wapel Windhead is completely confused. The parrot explains that Vegapunk is broadcasting this using Navy tech. Vivi asks where Luffy and the others are, but Morgans calls her dumb and tells her to check the timestamp on the recording. This is not Egghead's current time, so these images must be pre-recorded. He says the place must already be worse than hell after a buster call, and he wants to make a headline about this story that will shake the the world. Vivi can only pray that Luffy and the others get out alive. In West Blue, everyone is ready for the broadcast, saying this scientist is crazy for chopping off his head and sticking an apple antenna on it. In North and South Blue, people are curious about what he wants to say to the whole world. And in the three-legged women's kingdom, they are drooling, calling Vegapunk the old man on the boat. Shaka says it will take 10 minutes to brew the coffee. But at this rate, nobody will even get a sip. Ivankov starts laughing at Vegapunk's head, which is way smaller than last time. Koala asks if these are the famous copies of the Doctor. Morley wants to know how he can broadcast this message while being held hostage. Sabo asks Dragon if Vegapunk will really reveal the truth about the world. The absentee dad remembers the conversation he had with Shaka months ago, saying he knew he would die soon, and he keeps thinking that is the only thing he has done since the anime started. For 28 years, Dragon has literally done nothing. No fighting, no escaping captivity, not even showing a little power to us. At Egghead, the giant beaver is almost there while carrying Frankie and the others, and the giant robot is stunned when he comes face to face with the warrior's ship from Elbaf. That was Great Irek, and they would set sail as soon as the bosses returned. Bonnie is worried, asking if Vegapunk will come back safe. He will, girl, trust him. The Gorosei are calmly watching the broadcast as if time is on their side. Luffy says that even after all those punches, the bearded guy is still intact. Borsalino tries to catch him off guard and shoots a laser from his eyes, but Luffy barely dodges and says that as long as his friends are not free, these two will go nowhere. He hits a Gomu Gomu no Donshibaru, sending Saturn and Kizaru flying with a massive kiss. Stuck together, this is the famous "till death do us part." They get so flattened they look like Aladdin's magic carpet. Luffy starts spinning them like pizza dough. He says that since the horned guy always recovers, this time he will send both of them to the ends of the world. He throws them to the moon and starts cracking up. The Marines see something coming toward them from afar. They take a Gomu Gomu no Kizaru right in the face as a warning. A whole warship explodes and Saturn is next, but the bastard regains control and heads back toward Luffy. Caught off guard, he almost has a heart attack from shock, asking why nothing can hurt this old rascal. Kizaru is just a limp coat on the deck, thinking back to the moment he had to stab Vegapunk. The Gorosei tell Saturn that time is running out. They cannot let Vegapunk reveal everything he knows. Luffy dodges all the Gorosei's assassination attempts that have now finally stopped spinning. He glares at Saturn, who looks even uglier, like a sick pig, and he begins the incantation. Out of nowhere, a blue flame and a pentagram appear on Egghead's ground, and they also appear in Mary Joie in front of the Gorosei. That fat butt better get off the couch and activate the world government's overpowered mode. Suddenly, the weather in Egghead flips and a sinister black lightning strikes. Luffy is shocked, asking what the heck is going on. Sanji says it looks exactly like when the old spider showed up. One demon was not enough, so now all 5 are coming to turn Egghead into a nightmare. The Marines were losing their minds. Old Tsuru saw those sinister black lightning bolts and screamed that it was over. These were the same freaky rays from when Saturn hit the island. Only this time, there was way too much lightning for one person to handle. A giant chonky dude launches a humongous arrow at one of the ships, causing massive destruction. The arrows were so heavy they might as well have been cannonballs. Another towering figure with doll-like hair leaps onto a ship to flex his axe up close for the Marine. Dory and Brogy stroll in laughing like maniacs, with a gaze so scary even the devil would flinch. Atlas yells that the lightning is coming from where Stella and the others are. Luffy yells, "Where the hell is this lightning coming from?" while dodging Saturn's horn attacks at the same time. 4 massive tornadoes spin around them, taking up half the battlefield. Sanji realizes the danger and tells Nami and the crew to run. Meanwhile, in Mary Joie, they've got the TV running, streaming Vegapunk's transmission. The old man explains that this is humanity's dream. Vega coffee. Just a drop in your water and boom, instant hot coffee. He asks how much longer, and Shaka says, just 7 more minutes. Then we're live, because there's probably no one near Egghead to intercept the broadcast. Imagine if there was. Back on the battlefield, Luffy is dodging attacks while the lightning intensifies, shaping into beast-like forms. Luffy freaks out, screaming that now there are 5 monsters. He uses observation haki to figure out what the heck is happening, but he's never felt such monstrous presences. First, a chicken foot appears, then a horse hoof. The claws are sharp enough to split a mountain in half. It's officially a horror show on the island. Then the 5 elders make their entrance. Shepherd Jew Peter with his sandworm form. Ethan-born Nusjuro with his skeletal horse spirit. Topman Warcurry as a warthog straight out of Timon and Pumbaa. Marcus Mars with his toothy parrot form. And of course, the spider lady we've all seen way too much of. These are the 5 elders, the supreme authorities of the world, each packing ridiculously overpowered abilities. Their aura is so intense that Luffy is getting blasted backward, debris flying everywhere, barely dodging while scrambling for cover. He rockets through a wall, narrowly avoiding the toothy hen, almost getting squashed by the pig and skewered by Saturn. He rockets through the skeletal horse, which looks like Aaron's founding titan, and from underground, a massive worm bursts out, almost devouring him. The 5 Supreme World Government Elders are finally together on the battlefield for the first time. Luffy thinks, if this keeps up, he'll destroy the entire island. Time to deal with these maniacs. He pulls all the air from the ground and grows huge to level the playing field. But Saturn isn't messing around. He hits Luffy with a terrifying King's Haki that slams him into the ground like a pancake. The crazy horse uses its Haki to launch Luffy again, then jumps on him, going full speed berserker mode. Its target isn't Luffy. It's the pacifists who are wrecking the marine ships. The horse transforms into a centaur and slices a pacifist in half in the blink of an eye. The mech freezes and starts short-circuiting, and barely had the first one fallen when the second giant mech gets shredded too. The bald dude was losing it, smashing all the marine weapons that cost a fortune. The soldiers spot a giant horse, and suddenly it vanishes. Turns out it's already on the other side of the island finishing off the pacifists. Every battalion reports the cyborgs are offline, but the attacks happened so fast, no one understood what even went down. Then Nusjuro finishes off the stragglers, freezing them from the inside out. In the center, the toothy parrot is completely hyped, flapping so hard that Luffy looks like Team Rocket blasting off at the speed of light. Sanji calls Nami's crew to explain the situation, but even he has no clue what's going on. All they know is there's no way they can win now. They need an emergency escape plan, like yesterday. Nami doesn't get why everyone's panicking. The marine doctors check the fallen pacifists and say their brain circuits got frozen, so they're only temporarily offline. With a strong ally on the field, they don't have to waste time fighting those giant bots anymore. Doberman says this is their shot to take out Bonnie. Meanwhile, Marcus Mars is flying full throttle toward the cloud line. Sanji screams for everyone to get moving because an ultra-dangerous monster is barreling straight at them. He almost got barbecued when a lightning bolt smacked right on top of them. Nami points out some people still haven't arrived and they hear a scream heading their way. It's Lilith and Brook coming in on a ship with 0 brakes. Everyone's panicking except the skeleton and Robin. Down below, Saturn complains that Nika is super annoying and goes back to try taking the kid out. He's faster than a Super Saiyan, hitting 20 punches per second. But Luffy's observation Haki is on point and he dodges every strike. Even the sandworm that dropped straight on him, but the worm disappears, and Rubber Monkey asks if that was even a worm. The ground starts shaking and suddenly, Jupiter slams a crater open in the ground, swallowing Gear 5 whole. The bald dude keeps freezing the cyborg systems, all powered by ChatGPT. Meanwhile, Seagull is up in the clouds, ready to wreck the lab. He charges in flames, slamming into the barrier with everything he's got. Usopp warns Sanji that Skeleton and Lilith have arrived. The ship is almost fully intact with 0 issues. Brook knew it would all work out, but Lilith kicks his butt, saying it's all thanks to God Usopp. He launched a Midori Bushi that grew a bamboo forest before the ship hit the barrier. Pinocchio says they really want out of there, but Zoro and Jinbei haven't arrived yet. The Fishman says he's almost there. The battle isn't over, but he's gonna drag Zoro in. I want to see him jump into this mess without turning into tuna tartare. Tiger Boy is full-on raging, and Zoro even more so. Rob Lucci lands a storm kick so strong it splits the forest trees in half. Mid-air, he runs into a strike from Zoro and has to tank it with his iron body. Zoro blasts into infinity, ready to shred some jaguar meat, but suddenly a sinister presence shows up and shocks them both. They're wondering where the hell it came from. They pull back to gain speed and strike again, but that monstrous aura returns and terrifies them both. Zoro's Enma even takes flight because now it identifies as a bird, and by now you know whose monstrous Haki that is, right? And no, surprisingly, it's not Jinbei. Rob Lucci says he's sure Zoro felt that Haki too, because it was spreading all over the island, and right after, they're back to trying to chop each other's heads off. After searching forever, Jinbei finally finds them. Zoro charges with blood in his eyes at insane speed, punching a hole through the sky like it's nothing. They're moving so fast, it's basically impossible to follow. But then Sanji drops a Discord message that Zoro's slowing everyone down and is just dead weight. That went straight into Zoro's ears, and he went full-on berserk, because getting called dead weight by a fried pastry chef is one of the ultimate humiliations ever. Tiger Boy struts toward him, activating his power. He unleashes a terrifying aura and hits with a Shigan. Actually, multiple Shigans, spawning a bunch of hands and raining blows like a Shoryuken storm. But Zoro dodges everything like it's in slow-mo, eyes closed, just to flex his superiority. He zigzags, jumps off a rock, and fires a Santoryu Kokoba. Madara Gari! Rob Lucci freezes, stunned by the sheer force. It's like Zoro turned into a demigod overnight. He slices Lucci up like he's making an exotic jaguar coat. Even Jinbei's jaw drops at all that raw power. He had no idea there was a demon king in the crew. Meanwhile, Luffy's inside Jupiter's stomach, almost getting swallowed whole. He stretches his arm out, the jaws almost closing, nearly stuck, but the monster gulped down his backside super fast, and he he wriggles free. He yells at the worm monster that it tastes terrible, but just as he thinks maybe it might taste okay, Saturn grabs him and spins him like a hula hoop. Now he's getting revenge for what the kid did to him and Kizaru, slamming Luffy into Pumbaa's attack. Luffy gets dizzy and ends up back inside Jupiter's mouth. This old dude is way too hungry for Luffy. Seriously. Finally, help arrives. Dory and Brogy show up grinning, saying they saw a familiar face. They declare that a dark place doesn't suit this man and rush to help the Straw Hat. Dory blocks Saturn's swings and throws him back, while Brogy smashes Topman's face. They grab the horns of each of these horned dudes and slam them together, landing a double beefcake smack. Bro code is at an all-time high. The two giants rush in because Jupiter's the next target, using a sunsaw to decapitate the Gorosei and yank Luffy out by force. The kid pops out, cracking up, shocked to see the old giants. They say they couldn't just sit around and had to see the Straw Hat. Luffy's grinning so hard he's blushing. Now these three are about to wreck these half-baked Gorosei. Marcus Mars was flying across the island, radiating that monstrous haki. Jinbei shouted, "What the heck is that?" The beast was radiating pure rage, so they had to get out of there, fast. He went to grab Zoro, shouting it was time to go, but the swordsman wasn't having it. He said the fight wasn't over yet because the tiger was still alive and breathing. Problem was, he was barely standing and was spitting strawberry juice everywhere. Sanji asked if Jinbei had managed to get the mossy-haired guy out of the fight, but Rob Lucci was already ready for round two. The fishman grabbed Zoro, saying, "You already won." Lucci kept crawling forward, and Jinbei apologized for the chaos, then hit him with a water-powered karate strike so strong it sliced trees in half. Lucci even reverted back to human form, jaw dropping when he saw a giant flying chicken barreling straight at him. He asked the CP0 agent where York was. Zoro couldn't even process the size of this monster. Lucci reported York was trapped in the control room on the 4th floor. The two escapees? That was Roronoa Zoro and Jinbei, the Sea Knight. Up above, 5 more Straw Hats and 2 Vegapunks were prepping to sneak out the back. There were also 85 Cypher Paul agents and 4 Seraphim trapped in the basement, and only 6 minutes before Vegapunk's broadcast. The beast approached, impressed, saying the agent was truly remarkable. No further questions. But as the Gorosei started leaving, Lucci spoke up, asking if his friend inside could be spared. The parrot replied that isolating one bug is impossible when you're about to wipe out the whole hive. Meanwhile, Luffy was yelling that it had been over 2 years since he'd seen the giants. The big guys barely recognized him in this form. They'd heard tales of this god of Elbaf and wanted to know where he got that Nika outfit. The kid had no clue. And they had bigger problems to deal with before having a chat. Saturn muttered that these giants were going to be a real problem. Dory noted the monsters looked just like those from Elbaf. Luffy said they didn't have time to fight. They had to escape, but the bearded guy told him to chill. Sanji had already explained everything. The message got through. The crew would regroup on the other side of the island. The giants said they came to help the Straw Hats after reading the papers, especially seeing them trapped by the Marines. The kid had no idea about this news. When he heard he'd gotten villain fame for kidnapping Vegapunk, he laughed his head off. Time to get back to the ship. Dory sounded a giant trumpet that echoed across the island, so powerful even the ships were shaking. Olmo reported that the bosses had spotted the Straw Hats, ordering everyone back to the ship. The other giants laughed at the Marines. They were only there to save the Straw Hats anyway, since there was no treasure to plunder on these ships. Topman noticed the escape signal and said he wouldn't let it slide, and decided to play a little tune for them. He inhaled so hard through his nose, it felt like he sucked all the oxygen out of the room, then let out a terrifying scream packed with haki. Luffy was dodging like crazy, but buildings started exploding and catching fire. The Marines were in shock. Those black lightning strikes were back. The King's haki was so absurd. Even the weaklings fainted 2 kilometers away. Even the giants had to hold themselves back or risk flying away. Luffy was laughing midair, his body starting to fall apart like Mr. Potato Head from Toy Story. The giants were stunned, and Dory planted his sword to hold Luffy together. This was just plain bizarre. The kid started sticking all the pieces back together like some kind of sticker album. Brogy asks if he's okay because he looked like a jigsaw puzzle, but he says he's all good, and Dory cracks up, saying his body is just plain ridiculous. Still, that King's haki roar was dangerous. The boar starts scraping its hooves on the ground, calling them bugs. The Elbaf warriors ask who this pig is, and the Straw Hat explains it's a big-shot government guy. Top Man spins like a Beyblade, screaming he's gonna wipe them out. He turns his horns into blades, but Dory and Brogy block the strikes with Svalin's solar shield. The Gorosei ask if they even realize the mess they're making. The duo just shrugs. They're protecting their buddy. Then they launch that pork ball to infinity and beyond to roast some enemies later. But Saturn scoffs, calling them a bunch of bugs. If they're friends of the Straw Hats, they'll get exterminated too. He launches a rain of grape juice, and Luffy screams to watch out. It's poison. The kid's so hungry he bites into a tree and turns it into a baseball bat. He grabs a bucket of paint from the portal of imagination and shines it up. He puts on a helmet, swings like a pro, and sends every ball right back to the owner. They charge at the Gorosei, and Luffy's jaw drops as everything explodes. The Elbaf crew shouts that the flames block the forest. Perfect chance to bolt. But they have to hurry because these guys are basically immortal. The giants admit they've never heard of a race or skill that's immortal. Yet the beasts keep rising from the ashes like phoenixes. The three goofballs march, singing and celebrating their escape. Meanwhile, God Usopp leads a team to pull the grounded ship free. Robin's napping while Nami yells at Jinbei and Zoro to hurry. Their boots are failing, so running it out by brute force is easier. The beaver giant and the others are nearly at the ship, but three vice admirals are waiting to beat them down. The Hornhead says he won't let Bonnie escape. Sanji hears a weird noise somewhere. Back at the broadcast, Shaka warns Stella to drink the coffee. Time's running out, but it's so hot, he keeps burning his tongue. York watches the chaos, screaming to get her shackles off. Even Kaku says she's too loud, and Stussy tells her to zip it. She stops shouting just as Marcus Mars lands right on top of them. He asks where the room broadcasting the video is, but York nearly has a meltdown dealing with that talking parrot. On the marine ship, Kizaru's still down. Doctors ask where he's hurt to patch him up. He says it's a deep wound, but all he needs is rest. Meanwhile, in the flames, the legendary robot Emeth rises for the first time in 200 years, calling the name Joyboy. He rips a giant steak from his chest, and somehow this robot is bleeding. The Marines shout that the Elbaf ship can't leave, but they freeze when the ground starts shaking. They look up and see a Megazord stomping around like nothing happened. The battalions report that on Egghead's northwest coast, something way bigger than the giants appeared, and fire doesn't even faze it. It crushes everything in its path, and even apologizes to Joyboy for some reason. Baldy Nusjuro was slicing through Pacifistas non-stop, chopping those giant robots like a hibachi chef on steroids. The Marines saw their chance to get back to Egghead. After all, they couldn't let Emperor Straw Hat Luffy slip away. Nusjuro could not believe Vegapunk gave a 12-year-old kid the power to nuke an entire country. The giants were heading back to their ship, and the Marines wanted to sink it before they could escape. Vice admirals stood in their way, and Frankie yelled if they were that desperate for attention. Red King, that cone-headed dude, cranked his power to the max, screaming that no one was getting through. Frankie's giant robot rolled up like, "Move or get mowed down!" They squared off like two dudes about to kiss, but changed their minds and threw punches instead. And the Vice Admiral got absolutely humbled by Frankie. He talked big, but ended up eating pavement. Pomsky charged at Bonnie, yelling that she was not taking those weapons. So she told a giant to look after her dad. The Marine fired at her midair, but Bonnie dodged using her jet boots and told that clown not to call her dad a weapon. She slapped his face and turned the mustached man into a snot-nosed brat. Then she kicked his teeth in and kept pounding him just to vent her rage. Atlas came flying in hot and blasted guillotine with a massive, ultra-mighty punch. The guy didn't even have time to blink. Bonnie shouted that the Straw Hats still hadn't arrived, so they needed to get off this island fast. The Vice Admirals got back up, screaming again that they would never let them escape, because failing meant losing their heads. Meanwhile, up in the Leba phase, York was losing her mind. She was chained up while a giant parrot monster stared her down. She begged him not to eat her because she doesn't even taste good. Debatable. Marcus Mars unleashed his hockey, shattering York's chains, and demanded to know where the broadcast room was. She should know. After all, she is a Vegapunk. York could not believe this creature was one of the five elders, but before she could finish her sentence, he started snacking on her. Back in the broadcast room, Shaka asked if the old man was not going to drink his Vega coffee, but Vegapunk snapped that it was too hot. Pythagoras joked that they all knew the geezer could not handle hot drinks. Only 4 minutes left until the big reveal. York led the giant bird to the room where the video was recorded. He asked if she was sure, then dropped a nuclear-sized bomb that blew the whole place to dust. York screamed that he was insane. Blowing it up would not change anything. The broadcast was still rolling because obviously the real transmission device wasn't there. York told him exactly that. If she were Stella, she would never hide the Den Mushi in the same room where they filmed. The Gorosei just said fine. Then he would blow up the entire lab. York panicked, explaining that would make things worse. The second floor was full of weapon prototypes, and the first floor powered the whole facility. Not to mention the gas tanks. If they blew, Punk Records would go with them. So the parrot freak told her to start thinking, since her brain worked like Vegapunk's anyway. York shouted that she wanted to stop the transmission too, because if they kept committing crimes, it would ruin her dream of becoming a celestial dragon. Then suddenly, the bird monster heard the voice of someone insignificant, and York realized it might be the transmission snail itself. He said it looked like a tiny spiral shell with a pretty suspicious shape. Then the Gorosei told York to take him straight to that Den Den Mushi, and she gave him a grin so sneaky it could sell stolen candy to kids. The two of them flew off, and Stussy finally breathed in relief, then roasted Kaku, saying nobody even cared about him. The nosy pigeon boy asked what kind of monster that thing even was, and the blondie said it must be one of the 5 elders. Pinocchio laughed in her face, saying she got ditched even after betraying CP0, but she told him to chill. She chose to stay behind herself because someone had to complete the final mission. Kaku was totally lost, and even back on the Sunny, Nami could not believe they were just leaving Stussy behind. Edison explained that the barrier had to close the moment they escaped with the ship, and it could only be controlled from the control room. That is why Stussy volunteered to stay. Robin pointed out that thanks to her, they could break through the barrier, but they would not be able to fly nearly as far as the Vega Force would have carried them. Edison ran the numbers and said that, according to science, the ship was absolutely going to crash and burn. Nami almost had a heart attack, and Usopp shouted that the explosive cannon was ready. As soon as Zoro and Jinbe showed up, they could blast themselves toward the sea. But when Chopper explained that it still would not be enough to reach the ocean, the long-nosed freak froze in terror. The tin head started laughing, saying they were going to need a miracle, but he declared that he was a scientist, so he would make sure their ship landed safely on water. He blasted off, and Lilith chased after him, screaming for him not to do it. Edison shouted that this kind of damage was nothing, then slammed straight into the barrier and blew everything up. Lilith fell to her knees, crying her eyes out, unable to believe what she just saw. Out at sea, the Navy ships were almost flying through the air. The wind was so wild, it was dragging everything back toward the island. Mountains were crumbling, and some unlucky soldiers ended up inside the mouth of Jupiter. The massive worm was sucking in all the air, and even the giants of Elbaf were struggling not to get pulled in. Despite their strength, they could barely move. Poor Luffy was the first one getting dragged away, but right before he got slurped up for good, he used Brogy as a springboard and launched himself away from that living vacuum cleaner. He kicked so hard he split a whole building in half. Dory and Brogy stumbled back. He juiced himself up like he just took 2 doses of pre-workout, turned into a muscle monster the size of a bodybuilder, and leaped with a skyscraper on his back, yelling, "If that overgrown worm is so hungry, he can eat this rock instead." Then he hurled that massive chunk of debris straight into the Gorosei's ugly mouth. The Elbaf giants burst out laughing, saying Straw Hat just maxed out his aura level. But right after the throw, Luffy's energy ran out, and he shriveled up like a raisin mummy. The big bearded guys freaked out, asking why he suddenly turned into a skinny grandpa. Luffy shouted that he needed food, and Brogy handed him something called Hakarl, a dish so stinky it could clear a 5-mile radius. Even Luffy, who would probably eat a rock if it looked tasty, hesitated. That stuff was fermented shark, Elbaf's emergency rations straight from nightmare cuisine. The rubber monkey started eating it, and immediately regretted every life choice that led him there. But suddenly, his energy shot back up, and he bulked up like he just downed a gallon of pre-workout. Out of nowhere, Topman came charging in to catch up with the crew, and the giants yelled for everyone to watch out for the boar. But Luffy roared that he was fully recharged now and jumped straight at Pumbaa. He activated Gear 3rd, packed with armament haki, and launched a blazing red rock that could melt steel. The hit was so brutal, it left the boar dizzy, but that thick hide was tougher than expected, and Luffy was the one who got hurt. The crew used the chance to run while they still could. Meanwhile, on the ship, Lilith was sobbing her heart out over Edison. Then another explosion shook the area, and they heard a creepy spider crawling up the walls. Turns out Saturn got tired of getting smacked around by Luffy and decided to pick on the weak ones to feel strong again. Down below, the vice admirals were completely wrecked, and the crew was about to board the Elbaf ship when disaster struck. One coward sliced the giant from behind. Everyone froze in shock. It was none other than bald-headed Nusjuro in his hybrid form, eyes glowing red and ready to massacre every pirate in sight. Meanwhile, Marcus Mars finally reached the secret room. Only 1 minute remained before Vegapunk's big truth reveal, and the Gorosei walked in calm as ever, like time itself was on his side. That smug old man had found a transmission snail on the floor and told Vegapunk his luck had just run out. At last, Vegapunk's grand broadcast begins, the truth that will shatter the world. Marcus Mars stood right in front of Punk Records, the biggest brain on the planet, still running even after Vegapunk kicked the bucket. And if you thought old Applehead's noggin was already huge, wait till you see the size of that floating balloon brain taking up the skyline. The old man says he'll keep the transmission going, but he's worried if people will believe believe what he's about to say, because once they hear it, there's no turning back. Over in Syrup Village, Usopp's pirate crew was panicking. If even Kaya, the rich girl, didn't have a video snail, what chance did a bunch of broke wannabe pirates have? Mary said those video snails were massive anyway. But hey, at least they could still hear Vegapunk's voice. And Kaya? She's clearly saving herself for Usopp when he finally comes home. Lucky man. Kaya said Dr. Vegapunk revolutionized medicine with his research. On a marine ship, the operators reported that the real broadcast was about to start. Even at Twin Cape Lighthouse, Laboon popped up to listen in, while Crocus prayed Vegapunk wouldn't spill the beans he feared he would. Back in Vegapunk's hometown, everyone was watching proudly. An old man called him the pride of Baltimore, while a kid asked if Vegapunk caused the island's disaster, but that one was definitely Frankie's fault. Far away in the Bird Kingdom, where Chopper once studied medicine, the locals realized the transmission was coming from the same island as their little raccoon doctor. They joked that Vegapunk had built more weapons than Tony Stark on a bender. Meanwhile, over at Hachinosu, pirates were torn between fighting or tuning in to the breaking news. Back on Egghead, Marcus Mars stomped down to crush the transmission snail, but the fool fell for the oldest trick in the book. It was just a decoy. The real snail was hidden somewhere else. The Gorosei were foaming at the mouth in fury, shocked that they'd been duped so easily. And even with a brain that size, Vegapunk's Alzheimer kicked in. He started introducing himself all over again. The other elders ordered Marcus Mars to shut down the transmission, but he admitted he'd been tricked and needed more time. The show had officially begun, and the long-armed tribe folks were cheering like it was the Super Bowl. The bird elder muttered that the big-headed scientist had over-prepared because the video was running on auto and couldn't be stopped. York revealed that Vegapunk was continuing the work of the Ohara scholars, and the 5 elders turned whiter than a ghost in a snowstorm. This wasn't just a message, it was the sequel to Professor Clover's final words. Meanwhile, Sanji was sprinting faster than a man late on rent. When he heard Bonnie screaming for help, his love instinct kicked in full throttle. When he got there, he saw a massive bald horse freak raising a sword over her. The old man shouted that Bonnie would never steal their military power and swung to slice her in half. But Sanji went turbo mode, yelling that Bonnie only had eyes for him. And after this arc, the FBI might have something to say about that. He flipped through the air and landed a blazing kick right on Nusjuro's chin, sending blood flying everywhere. Then he mocked him, saying the Straw Hats weren't going to go easy just because he was an old-timer with back problems. But Nusjuro caught fire, transforming into a demonic skeletal horse straight out of a nightmare. The monster bit down on Sanji, knocking Vegapunk's body off the edge, but Atlas dove in and caught him at the last second. Not that it mattered much. The old man was already one step away from becoming a memory. Frankie tried to land a massive right hook, but the horse-faced geezer blocked him, ready to stomp them like roaches. That's when Kashi and Oimo noticed their buddy Soja King's crew was in trouble and jumped in like nightclub bouncers, grabbing the elder by both arms. Sanji broke free but fell headfirst straight into the ground. If he were a regular human, that would have been instant hospital time, but since he's built like a cyborg Ken doll, the worst he'll get is a stiff neck tomorrow. Bonnie activated her distorted future and grew as big as King Kong on steroids. She was towering over the actual giants now. This girl could use the elder as a welcome mat. She leaped to crush him, and his face looked like someone just hit him with a +4 card in Uno. Meanwhile, during the broadcast, Vegapunk admitted he had committed 2 unforgivable sins and could be arrested or killed any second, so he programmed the video to start the moment his heart stopped beating. Everyone froze, realizing the old man was already 6 feet under. People in Sabati started bawling, and even Caesar and Sanji's deadbeat dad freaked out. Their lifelong dream was to surpass Vegapunk's genius. Meanwhile, that gossip vulture Morgans was losing his mind because Vegapunk had just dropped the headline of the century, ruining his scoop. Before his message began, Vegapunk told everyone not to judge whoever ended his life, even if they looked like the devil himself, because what he was about to reveal would melt their brains. Up on Egghead, the Straw Hats came face to face with Saturn. The crew froze, asking if anyone had enough bug spray to take down that giant spider. Though let's be real, they'd need a whole factory to even tickle that thing. The monster told them to move aside since he had no time for insignificant insects. But Robin froze the second she heard his voice. It was the same one she remembered from the Hell of Ohara, the voice of one of the 5 elders. The old man recognized her too, calling her the foolish girl that Akainu failed to kill. Nami demanded to know what that demon was talking about, but as Saturn's tentacles lashed out, she screamed for everyone to protect Robin at all costs. Brook froze and snapped one of his own legs. Usopp blew another up, and Chopper went full tank mode to shield Robin while Nami pulled her out at the last second. Even Zeus got the message. Everyone went all in against that demonic spider. Meanwhile, Marcus Mars was shaking with rage trying to locate the broadcast signal, but there was so much life on the island that he could not track it down. York was freaking out like an unpaid intern afraid of losing her big shot at becoming a celestial dragon. Vegapunk kept speaking, saying that what he was about to reveal might sound insane, but humanity deserved to know the truth. The Gorosei held a Discord call, and Marcus Mars suggested blowing up the entire power plant to stop the broadcast, but Saturn called it a terrible idea. He said he did not care if every Marine soldier got wiped out, but if they blew up the lab, they'd never be able to recreate the Mother Flame, the weapon Imusama wanted so badly. Then came the moment that silenced the entire planet. With eerie calm, Vegapunk declared that the entire world was going to sink into the ocean. The Marines were frozen in disbelief. The fishmen and mermaids were celebrating because it meant it was finally their turn to inherit the Earth. And the Gorosei were losing their minds, screaming Vegapunk's name. So yeah, my friend, anyone with a devil fruit better start shopping for floaties, because when this ship goes down, swimming is not an option. And now it makes perfect sense why the celestial dragons live up in the sky. They'll be the only ones still dry when the rest of the world goes under. At Marine HQ, the soldiers were losing their minds, asking how in the world the planet could possibly sink. Everyone thought Vegapunk had finally gone senile, and Akainu looked ready to punch a hole through the wall. Meanwhile, in Mocktown, the locals were cracking up, saying the old man should quit science and try stand-up comedy. They said he was just using his death as an excuse to mess with the whole world's head. I mean, a planet swallowed by the sea? That's a tough sell, even for a mad genius. Over at Fishman Island, everyone was terrified, and Shirahoshi worried about what would happen to Luffy and the crew. The Marines weren't sure if Vegapunk's message was true, but one thing was certain: the man had thrown the world into chaos, while York ran around like a maniac, terrified that Stella was actually revealing everything. Vegapunk's voice echoed through the transmission, saying that if his calculations were correct, a massive earthquake would soon shake the entire world. People started freaking out, because that exact quake had just happened, exactly as Vegapunk predicted weeks before his death. He said the sea level would rise by 1 full meter across the globe, making some islands completely uninhabitable. He warned that folks could ignore him if they wanted, but this disaster wasn't natural. It was man-made, a deliberate act by none other than the world government. That's when Saturn went berserk, smashing everything in sight. Nami called Zeus, and he blasted a thunderbolt right into that wrinkled demon's head. Brook followed up with a morning serenade, freezing Saturn's brain like he'd just chugged a bucket of ice cream. Lilith fired her bubble blaster, and Usopp launched a bean straight at his face. Not that it mattered, because it barely scratched the guy. He swung back with those creepy claws, ready to shred everyone. Chopper tried to shield the crew in his defense form, but even that wasn't enough. The monster called them worthless insects and flexed like he'd just taken 3 doses of gym juice. He stomped the ground so hard it sent everyone flying, but Robin was quick and created a net of hands to catch the crew just in time. Saturn ordered them to get out of his way and charge straight through Chopper, trampling him like a bug. He nearly crushed Nami and the others too, but decided to keep going. Because now, stopping that transmission was far more important than dealing with a bunch of nobodies. He asked Mars if he'd checked the power plant yet, and said he was heading there himself. That lab had to be protected no matter what. Vegapunk said that wishing for peace was his very first sin. He once dreamed of creating infinite energy to bring progress to the world. Meanwhile, Saturn stormed into the power plant and came face to face with the Mother Flame, a weapon so powerful it could erase an entire country with a single blast. He even dropped his monster form to take a closer look, and when he spotted a Denden Mushi, the first thing he did was smash it like an angry boomer seeing TikTok for the first time. But of course, the transmission kept going, and the Elder lost his cool. Marcus Mars went berserk, tearing apart everything alive in the lab. Out at sea, Marine ships kept firing at the giant robot Emeth, but nothing they did could bring that beast down. Luffy, meanwhile, was spinning around like a malfunctioning Beyblade, completely dizzy. The giants yelled at him to quit fooling around before he roasted himself alive. Vegapunk continued, saying his second great sin was tied to a mysterious century, the one that existed between 900 and 800 years ago. He explained there's a massive gap in history during that time. Imusama started sweating harder than a sinner in church when he heard that part. The Celestial Dragons ordered the Marines to shut down the broadcast immediately. Vegapunk was about to expose the truth of the Void Century. The nobles screamed that a simple death sentence was not enough for him. They wanted him to suffer. Vegapunk calmly said that the only way to uncover the truth of the Void Century was by deciphering the ancient poneglyphs scattered across the world. Giant Saul laughed proudly, saying the world was finally about to learn the truth. In Orangetown, a little girl said that long ago, 20 kings united to create the world as it is today. But Vegapunk questioned if that story was really true. He explained that deciphering poneglyphs is strictly forbidden by the world government, but even as a government scientist, he chose to risk everything to pursue that knowledge. Back on Egghead, the Straw Hats were relieved that Monster Saturn had left. Lilith guessed he must be terrified of Stella's broadcast. Robin was stunned to hear that Vegapunk had deciphered multiple poneglyphs using the book's salvage salvaged from O'Hara, and the old man said he never once regretted it. In the lab, Edison was barely hanging on, all beat up but still turning a crank, mumbling that he was almost there. Vegapunk continued, saying that everything he discovered was only a fragment of the true history, and it would be wrong to fill in the blanks with mere speculation. So he would only reveal what he was absolutely sure of. Then Vegapunk revealed the centerpiece of his story, the man who lived 900 years ago, a warrior with a body that could stretch like rubber, much like Nika, the sun god of Elbaf mythology. And that man's name was none other than Joyboy. Luffy lands a massive punch right in the boar's ugly face, but ends up burning his hand again, and the giants are laughing their heads off. Vegapunk's voice echoes, Joyboy was the very first man on the seas ever to be called a pirate. Over in Wano, the samurai were tuned in to the broadcast. Kinnaman was shocked that their country could even receive a signal from the outside world. Turns out it was thanks to a Denden Mushi they swiped from Orochi. Everyone there said they wanted to see Luffy again. The man's such a legend, they even raised the Straw Hat flag over the capital. At G4 prison, Killer asked if this Joyboy guy was stronger than Captain Kidd. Kidd puffed his chest and said, "Of course not. Relax, though. That was just that chubby faker who pretended to be Luffy back in Sabati. Some folks really make a living pretending to be other people, huh?" The round dude bragged that he could definitely beat this so-called Joyball. Vegapunk went on, saying the poneglyphs he studied mentioned a great war long ago, a war where Joyboy fought against what is now the world government, and Marcus Mars was still tearing the lab apart trying to find that transmitter no matter what it took. Vegapunk said Joyboy's crew was so powerful, it forced the entire world government to unite, but no one knows what caused the war. Vegapunk believed it was a clash of ideals, not good versus evil. He revealed that Joyboy came from a civilization so advanced it would make even today's science look like cave painting. Carrot asked if Joyboy had any connection to Zunisha, the giant elephant. Vegapunk explained that the weapons from that era were beyond anything human hands should have been able to build. Foxy refused to believe a word of it, but the long-nosed blonde just said, "Whatever, I'm starving." Vegapunk said even a genius like him couldn't replicate those ancient weapons, and that was the real problem. Back on Egghead, Brook was calling for Jinbe and Zoro. They needed to find a way off the island fast. Then Nami freaked out because suddenly the clouds started moving. Brook guessed that this must have been Edison's final plan, adjusting the island's descent so they'd crash into the sea instead of splattering on the ground. Lilith was still panicking about that tin can Edison, but he just told the Straw Hats to run no matter what. He said they must not let the world government capture them, no matter the cost. Stussy got a call from Edison, who sounded like a dying toaster, telling her to drop the barrier and get out of there. But she said she was not leaving until the Straw Hats were safe. Tinhead told her the barrier was useless anyway. It could not stop the monsters storming the island, so the same shield that was supposed to protect them was now trapping them like rats. Meanwhile, Saturn and Marcus Mars were walking through the lab, frying every Denden Mushi in sight with Conqueror's Haki. Edison said he had done everything he could to help the Straw Hats escape. The rest was up to them. Stussy was relieved, saying Stella would hate her if they failed, but Edison told her Stella would never hate her and ordered her to run. Still, the girl was lost like an ex after a breakup, saying she did not know who to live for without Stella. Outside, Jinbe apologized for being late, but Zoro told him to man up because everyone was in a rush. Nami overheard that and said she was going to beat him up herself. She screamed for them to hurry because marine ships were already surrounding them. She did not want to get blasted the second they hit the water. Down below, Atlas was devastated by Stella's death, but there was no time to cry. Too much needed to be done. Kashi and Oimo were wrestling with Baldi Nusjuro, and Sanji came flying in with a flaming concassé that could melt steel. But the old man blocked it mid-air like it was nothing. Sanji threw a couple more flaming kicks, but Nusjuro countered with a clean head smash that sent the cook flying like a broken drone. Kashi grabbed the horse by the tail to hold him still while Oimo and Bonnie charged to crush him, but Nusjuro blocked them both easily and launched them away like toys. Then he kicked Kashi and lunged at Bonnie, ready to slice her in half. Everyone froze, especially the simp of the century, but Frankie swooped in at the last second, saving her from becoming sushi. Nusjuro's blade only cut through the front of the giant ship, and Bonnie shrank back to her child form, completely drained. The warriors of Elbaf yelled that they could not lower their guard against that monster, but then he suddenly galloped away through the sky. Meanwhile, Vegapunk continued his message, revealing that the Void Century ended with Joyboy's defeat. Nusjuro bolted off to shut down the broadcast once and for all. Vegapunk said Joyboy's fall left behind damage so massive it could never be repaired. Nusjuro was furious, calling humans insolent vermin, and with one monstrous slash, he split Egghead Island right down the middle. Stussy fell on her back in shock, and everyone on the island watched as it broke apart before their eyes. The world government was losing its mind trying to stop the transmission. The island's floating base collapsed, sending everyone falling through the sky. The CP0 agents hit the ground like pancakes. Back on the broadcast, Vegapunk said what is obvious now now was not so obvious back then. The world had already sunk once during the Void Century. What remains today are just fragments of the ancient continent. The revolutionaries were stunned. The world from 1,000 years ago was buried under the sea. And if the oceans keep rising, history might repeat itself soon. And of course, beauty runs in the family. Because Nami's sister looked absolutely stunning while saying she had no time for this nonsense and went back to her tangerine farm. Vegapunk said that in just 100 years, sea levels rose by an incredible 200 meters. The Marines were speechless. Their own warships were barely 60 meters tall. No wonder the world could be swallowed whole so easily. But the captain ordered his men not to listen to that criminal. In Mocktown, people were laughing so hard they were crying, saying Vegapunk's stories just got more insane by the minute. In the Sakura Kingdom, Chopper's hometown, King Dalton asked if it could really be true, while Dr. Kuraha laughed, saying she liked this young scientist. He sure knew how to drop a bombshell. Out in the desert, the former Baroque Works agents stood near a 200-meter mountain, realizing how many lives must have been lost if the seas really rose that high. Vegapunk said the logical answer would be a natural disaster, but he was convinced it was man-made. Morgans panicked, and Vivi had to shut him up to keep listening. Vegapunk explained he had studied every field: climatology, geology, meteorology, and more, and all the data proved it was impossible for sea levels to rise 200 meters in just 1 century naturally. Then, after predicting the next rise, he finally confirmed the cause. The ancient weapons that once sank the world 800 years ago still exist, just waiting to be reactivated. In other words, the Great War from the Void Century never actually ended. Imusama was fuming after that revelation, looking like he was about to turn the whole world into ashes. No one could believe a word of it. How could a war that no one even knew existed still be going on today? Inside Imu's creepy castle, he stood before a painting of a woman who looked suspiciously like Vivi. She was most likely Queen Nefertari D. Lily, one of the 20 monarchs from that lost century. Vegapunk apologized to everyone, saying they had the right to know the truth, while the curly-haired royal bawled his eyes out over Vivi's disappearance. Vegapunk explained that his dream was to create an endless source of energy that could push humanity forward. And though it was not perfect yet, the Mother Flame had just reached the point of stability where it could finally be used. It was a source of energy that could enrich lives around the globe, but a small fragment of it had been stolen. Back on Egghead, the Marines refused to enter the island to rescue the CP0 agents. The whole place was on fire. Stussy shouted that everything was shaking and asked what happened. Edison, barely keeping himself together, said the labosphere had collapsed, meaning he could no longer send the floating clouds to help the Straw Hats escape. He warned that another one of those bald old freaks was heading their way and begged Stussy to run for her life. She asked if she could at least release Kaku, since both he and Rob Lucci were about to take the blame for the failed mission. Edison apologized for forcing her to betray her comrades, but said she could do whatever she wanted as long as she promised to survive. The blonde cried her heart out, but still smiled through the tears. Vegapunk continued, explaining that 2 weeks after the Mother Flame was stolen, a blinding flash was seen over the kingdom of Lulusia, and soon after, the entire country vanished from the map. The girl who had escaped from there could not believe it. Someone had really done that. Vegapunk said that as a scientist, he could confirm that only the Mother Flame could have generated such destructive power. At the World Council, the kings were clueless about Lulusia's destruction and rushed to verify it. Vegapunk confessed that the flame he had created had been used to awaken an ancient weapon. He had no idea who did it, but he admitted he was partly responsible for the deaths of thousands. He apologized for such a catastrophic mistake, because now the same man-made disaster that once sank the world could happen again at any time. In Wano, Momonosuke freaked out, yelling that Pluton might be activated, until Kinemon smacked him with a headbutt, telling him to watch his mouth. Vegapunk explained that there were once 3 ancient weapons, and Joyboy had intended to pass them down to future generations. He asked why Joyboy would do that. Did he want the world to sink again? Who was good and who was evil? He said someday those answers would be revealed. Sengoku even started choking from how fast he was eating in shock. Vegapunk added that once humanity uncovers that truth, the world might drown again. The Void Century remains full of mystery, but some people already learned the whole truth: the crew of the Pirate King himself. The Marines were in total shock, and Akainu was about to blow a fuse because Vegapunk would not shut up. Crocus looked uneasy. After all, he was one of the Roger pirates, and the people could not believe that such a dangerous secret had been in the hands of pirates all along. Meanwhile, York was panicking, confused about how Stella knew she was the traitor who stole the Mother Flame. The synchronization system was down, so he should not have known. She realized he must have figured it out using the data from Lulusia, and freaked out even more when she noticed the timeline did not add up. That meant he already knew what the world government was planning before it even happened. If that was true, why would he bother hiding the Den Den Mushi? Elsewhere on the island, Jupiter was hungry and decided to slurp chop up all the CP0 agents like spaghetti. Then York contacted the Gorosei, saying she knew exactly where the transmitter was hidden, inside the Fabria Strata, protected by the Iron Giant Emeth, the same robot the Marines had been bombarding without leaving a scratch. Vegapunk wondered why those who learned the truth had vanished without telling anyone. At Shaki's bar, she said Rayleigh had not gotten that drunk in years. The old man muttered that Vegapunk was talking too much, ruining the fun for the new generation. He said they deserve to enjoy the thrill of discovery just like he and Roger once did. And that is where the episode ends. Next time, while the Straw Hats prepare to escape, the Iron Giant will finally awaken, shaking the island to its core. The ancient mechanical warrior guarding the transmitter is about to start an insane battle. And if you made it this far, it's because you're a real anime fan. So, I've got a gift for you. Have you ever thought about making money with anime? Getting thousands of dollars every month just to work with your favorite anime? Yes, it's possible. Just with my channel, I've already made over $100,000 this year, working from home, from the beach, and even from a hotel pool. And best of all, making videos about my favorite anime. And I'm about to do something crazy. Right here in the description of this video, I've prepared a video for you, explaining step by step how you can start an anime channel on YouTube today without investing a single cent, get tons of views, and also make big money with your channel. And the best part is, I explained everything like it's inside an anime world, so even a goblin could understand. So click the link in the description and go watch the video now, because I won't leave it up for too long, alright? Don't come crying later.